Good morning. Good morning. Our program for the next couple of days will be to deal with chapter 2 majorly in paper 1. In between, we still have to talk about certain thinkers, small stories about them like J.P. Mills. So our basic area of coverage today will be majorly 2.2. And we will be starting with 2.3 also, quite a bit of things in 2.3. And I see that most of us are with our books. Book number 2 and 3 as was directed to you. So that several things which should actually be written can be avoided by going through the booklets. See, there are certain terms that are mentioned in 2.1 and 2. I am focusing on a few of them, such as those, and there is one more, social stratification, which I will be doing largely in political anthropology. So, meaning of culture, civilization, society, social groups, and social institutions. These are very less frequently and rarely asked topics. Now that you have the 10 markers, I didn't want you to take a risk. So some kind of an understanding of each of them you should be having. It's true that most of our half a course of discussions were about culture. Now it is very easy for you to write about the concept of culture. Had it been the first week, if at all I had started with talking about culture, now you could have ended up scratching your head. Now you have so many dimensions that maybe some bit of definitions are there and what constitute culture and how different people have studied culture. All things are known to you. So it is more or less like a summing up of certain things and trying to give you the meaning of the terms such as social groups, which seem to be for the first time I think we are using in the class. Whereas all other things, society was not in a great way talked about, but then some kind of a meaning of society was given during our course of discussions. Culture was very detailedly explained from various perspectives. Civilization, we will have to see the meaning of civilization we have come across somewhere. So sometimes if questions are asked, they are like culture and civilization in one question. And then concept of culture can be another question. Culture and society can be one. And then the other two can be asked, as such, social institutions and social groups. So I think this is a very good time to recall what we have done during the course. Social stratification, of course, we have seen the whole length of topics like Varna and caste, where we had dealt with stratification of society. But then there are a few others. I would want to talk about it when we discuss political anthropology. See, in all these topics, now I'll try to give you a brief idea of what we have done, and then whenever such concepts are asked in the exam, by default you should be giving two different diverse definitions of them. And how popular perspective is, what kind of popular perspective is existing regarding that particular topic. I repeat what I'm saying because, after listening to all together a different kind of topic yesterday, suddenly if you have to switch over to the other one, it looks to be slightly a difficult thing. But then you should have, after you have been trained in general studies, dealing with diverse topics, suddenly you switch off one and go to the other one. I'm sure you are used to that. Whenever such kind of concepts are asked, keep handy at least a couple of very popular definitions. For example, when we speak of culture, there has to be a definition of Taylor maybe, because that seems to be the most comprehensive one. There can be a definition of Malinowski. See, you are not actually learning many new things. Whatever you have learned somewhere else, you are trying to use for these questions. Defining, then speaking about how is it popularly understood by the general public, and how an anthropologist is trying to attach meaning to it. And if at all two concepts are put in the same question, like culture and civilization, you will have to see which is a much wider one, where exactly the other one fits in. What is the relation between the two? Like, we were used to writing questions on Varna and caste, or Sanskritization, Westernization, etc. That's how things are. Right now, from a layman's perspective, we have seen culture as a holistic means that consists of so many aspects, whether they can be material aspects, non-material aspects, whether they can be beliefs, traditions, lifestyle, etc. Every small element of culture, every small element of living forms part of a culture. Many times this discussion exists in the discipline, how are we going to distinguish between social anthropology and cultural anthropology, how society is different from culture, etc. It's something like this. When we speak of a society, we are talking about a population that has some major similarities. Society is a group of people that has similarities and that has a particular geographical boundary and a cultural boundary. So we understand that society is largely of a single kind, but we are not trying to keep aside the possibility of internal differences therein. You will have to understand that society is a group of people that have certain very strong commonalities. But one cannot ignore the possibility of diversities within society. It is as simple as an Indian society having so many diverse local traditions or local cultures. But once again, I would want to refer here to one of the earlier concepts that we have dealt with called ethnic boundaries. So society can be considered as one ethnic group where the boundary may be a geographical boundary, or it may be a national boundary, or it may be a cultural boundary, it may be a subcultural boundary. But you will have to understand, when we are defining society, we are making it a point that it is a group of people. So the prerequisite for a society is having some individuals. Without individuals, you cannot form a society. And these individuals, based on their consensus or based on some kind of evolutionary aspects, they might come up with a set of rules or set of practices so that you can live together following those rules, etc. These set of rules or values or understandings, all these are nothing but culture. So it's as simple as a society is a group of people, ethnic or racial, whatever. So it's like society is nothing but the originator of culture. Society is a group of people. What they have is culture. What they create is culture. So any particular human grouping cannot exist without a culture. And culture cannot exist without the presence of individuals therein. There is an inseparability there. Society cannot be conceived without having an evidence of people. The physical presence of people is the primary requisite to confirm that there is a society. And whenever there are more than one person existing, which may be considered as a social group or etc., etc., I am loosely calling it as society. When group of individuals are staying, together with some kind of commonality, understandable, recognizable commonality, and these commonalities are giving rise to a set of rules guiding their lifestyle, guiding their life, guiding their community or social living, that we call a culture. This basic understanding has to be there. That is the reason why we call this discipline as socio-cultural anthropology. You cannot distinguish one from the other. There is one other confusion that has been prevailing in many of the, not simply students but writers also, where should I keep civilization? If at all we see some not so very sophisticated writings, we find statements such as civilization is nothing but material element of culture. Civilization is nothing but material element of culture. That takes me to see what are the different categories a culture might have. Culture might be an obvious culture, a hidden culture. Culture may consist of different components. There are certain components that are very much visible, observable. There are certain that are hidden. Certain things that are innately there. There are other classifications such as material culture, non-material culture. Material, that is observable, tangible. Non-material may be certain things like the belief systems, the foundations of customs, how you understand different aspects of life and culture. But if at all somebody is writing civilization as the material aspect of culture, this is a misunderstanding. So I am giving these statements also, the so-called wrongly understood statements also, so that you would know whether whatever book you are reading, whether that can be believed or not. I hope you are following what I am saying. See, that is a popular perception that material culture is nothing but civilization. In fact, maybe those writers wanted to communicate that a culture with materialism as the basis could be civilization. There is a difference there. Material aspect of culture is civilization, meaning that, for example, I take the case of Paleolithic cultures or the Mesolithic cultures. They are not technically considered to be civilizational stages, but then they also have material and non-material. If you say that material aspect of culture is civilization, at every stage of evolution of humans, we find civilization existing. That's where there is a mistake committed. If at all you could recall what was written by, say, people like Taylor, Morgan, or Gordon Childe, all these people, the evolutionists, they have placed civilization somewhere at the top, and then towards the lower side you have groups like barbarism and then savagery, etc. I think in our discussions in anthropology, the term civilization for the first time occurred in the evolutionary stages of human societies and cultures. So we will have to understand this. Anthropologically, civilization is nothing but one of the more evolved stage of culture. Civilization is nothing but one of the more evolved stage of culture. And there could be several bases of it. As such, when we were observing the writings of Taylor or Gordon Childe, etc., we found that civilization is mostly defined by something called writing or a script, and maybe more evolved political institutions like a state-based political institution or a centralized political institution. There might be a stage where we observe specialization. There might be a stage where long distance contacts are there. Like when we were reading about the origin of cities from Ember, we found that long distance contacts were there. And then this could be, so this is something like a stage that is more evolved. Somebody else more conveniently say civilization is a more complex variant of culture. The others can be considered as simple societies. This is a complex society. So civilization is a complex stage of culture. So never write that kind of statements that this is the material element of culture, etc. Before formally writing down things, I thought I would also remind you about the social institutions. We have used this word especially in the context of Malinowski. We said that institutions, social institutions, were a cultural response. The institutions were a cultural response for specific human needs. So you remember primary, secondary, tertiary needs, etc., described by Malinowski. He was talking about some primary needs, and to see to it that those needs are realized, societies and cultures come up with certain responses in the form of establishing certain institutions. So institutions are primarily the response to fulfill certain basic or secondary human needs. It shows that in defining social institution itself, we are using functionalistic orientation. So when you are writing an answer, it shows very nice when you are starting your answer with Malinowski. See, this is popularly used by Malinowski in the context of explaining how individual needs are actually fulfilled and how different societies are coming up with diverse kinds of institutions to fulfill the similar needs. So it's as simple as the institution of marriage. It has come up to fulfill certain needs, but the institution of marriage is not the same across the societies. So that means that every culture, every society is coming up its own variant of the same institution. And where else did we come across the term institutions in anthropological thought? Brown was one. So his way of presentation of institutions was from the structural, functional perspective. So it is not so much about the fulfillment of function, but it is about arrangement of people. The arrangement of people in a particular format. Though he is mentioning there that this arrangement is to deliver certain goods, we safely dubbed it as delivering certain functions. There is the other person. Gardiner was there. So three prominent fellows. So if a question of this kind is asked, social institutions at n marker, all the three individuals must be present there. So the earliest one to write about social institutions was Malinowski, followed by Brown, and then you would come to talk about Gardiner. So that's where you are going to mention that these social institutions form a basis of molding the individual and molding the society, the nature of the society, how people behave, and how different institutions or how different cultural traits are interacting with each other is the result of certain institutions and how they are delivering their functions. So, and there are few other terms that we will be in the process of writing we will be coming across. I want you to start writing with the topic of culture. Please make a note there. The concept of culture forms the central theme of anthropological writings. Though variously defined, it is a conglomeration of the observable and non-observable and tangible, material and non-material aspects that might influence one another. Tyler's definition brought out a description and complex interlinkages complex interlinkages in the components of culture. In the components of culture. You know this definition, but still you write it again. Culture is that complex whole. Culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, customs, and any other capabilities or habits acquired by man as a member of the society. Tyler insisted on acquisition and complex interlinkages. For Malinowski, culture is more inherited than acquired. Whereas in contemporary anthropology, both acquisitive and inherited aspects of sociocultural aspects are incorporated in the definition of culture. Thus, that is the definition of Kroeber. The mass of learned, transmitted motor reactions, habits, techniques, values, ideas, and the behavior induced by all these elements. These in the sense defined by Tyler. You can write in the definition in the brackets there. All these in the sense he was referring to whatever was mentioned by Tyler. The mass of learned, transmitted motor reactions, habits, techniques, values, ideas, and behavior induced by all the elements narrated by Tyler. We'll take one other small definition that looks to be rather simple one, the man-made part of environment. Like how we try to remember definitions of caste, etc., the smallest one. This can be put in that category, but it requires explanation. Explanation is given by Tyler. Man-made part of environment, or the social variant of environment. Keep writing there. Based on the writings of different thinkers, the culture is understood to have the following characteristics. Such as, write in numbers there. Number one, culture is learned and shared. Culture is learned and shared, right in the brackets there, through the process of enculturation. Through the process of enculturation. You understand the meaning of it. Enculturation is one generation learning it from the previous generation. Secondly, it is studied in a historical perspective. It is studied in a historical perspective, such as evolution and diffusion. Continue writing there. It goes by the belief. It goes by the belief that culture is dynamic and spreads from one social group to the other. From one social group to the other. Right, the third one. Culture can be studied as a regional phenomena. Culture can be studied as a regional phenomena, such as in the concepts of culture circle and culture area. Fourthly, culture is a group of components. Culture is a group of components that operate along the principle of, right in quotes, integrationalism. Right in the brackets, as was narrated by Malinowski. That is, a change in one culture trait leads to changes in the rest of the elements. Right, the next point, number 5. Culture demonstrates a continuum. Underline the word continuum. From one stage of evolution to the other. Continue writing there. The continuum was described with concepts of survivals and culture change. Right, the 6th one. Culture is a symbolic entity. That is, every culture attaches meanings to the components therein. The meanings for the same symbol vary across cultures. And occasionally, within the same culture, based on time, and the reference group. Write the last one there. Culture can be understood through its classification such as material and non-material culture, or real and ideal culture. You understand this? Ideal is something that is desirable. Real is the exhibition of to what extent you have actually realized what is ideal. Most of the times, as if you could recall what B.D. Sharma was writing, there are set ideals to take care in the context of tribals, and ideals generally exist so that you don't implement them in toto. Ideals exhibit the utopian mind of the population. So you are actually trying to set your standards. So right from the childhood we are being taught to be truthful, to be faithful, to be humanistic. But then how many times during each day we might be resorting to uttering the untruth or the non-truth or the lies. So maybe our lives are filled with so many lies. Every morning we get up with a new lie, so that lie would keep us alive that particular day. My father used to make this exercise with our children. You need not have to show it to me, but you take a notebook and you put on adding numbers, how many times you are actually telling a lie during the day. And his idea was that every day when you are making this, generally this was the thing in a summer holiday exercise. So that is the time when most of the time you are around in the house and there are more opportunities, more occasions to lie with the family. So with your closest group, you tend to be lying more frequently than with the other group. So it's like, over a period of time, the number of lines that you are putting there should come down. And that is a self-satisfactory thing. And then come down, sir. The concepts of, right in the next line, the concepts of civilization and society. Concepts of civilization and society are close to culture in understanding its progress, and elements therein. Write a small side head there. Civilization. The earliest writers in anthropology, such as Tyler, used the concepts of culture and civilization, used the concepts or terms of culture and civilization interchangeably and synonymously, in spite of the fact that in his scheme of culture history, he mentioned civilization in a higher level of evolution. You'll have to understand here. See, the terms that he is using earlier to civilization, savagery and barbarism, he is not using in this sequence the term called culture. He is not using the term called culture in the scheme of evolution. He is only using the word civilization there. So it is more or less for him, the civilized are the ones that have a true culture, whereas the rest of the people are in the process of making the culture happen. I hope you have understood. That is where we are trying to mention it as culture and civilization when he is using interchangeably or synonymously. What it means is the stage at which he is finding civilization, that is where he is sure that culture is prevailing in its more elaborate, more established form, whereas others are striving to reach a stage of culture. I hope you are following. Make a note. His writings considered savagery and barbarism as the precursors to the origin of culture, that can be dubbed in this context as a civilization. In other words, the human populations earlier to the stage of civilization were, right in quote, cultureless. Right in the next paragraph. The later writers, such as Morgan, clearly define that civilization is a more evolved form of culture, with writing, underline the word writing, being a defining feature of the stage. Forgotten child, civilization is a stage of development of society and culture with the growing urbanism being a chief factor. Hence, for him, civilization is synonymous to origin of cities, along with written language, complex economic, political, and religious organizations. Right in the next line. For contemporary American anthropologists, civilization is an outcome of the process of ecological adaptation, of certain human populations. That is, characteristics such as specialization of occupation, centralized political system, redistribution as a mechanism of economic exchange, etc., are a response to changing ecology in terms of population, ecosystem, intercultural relations, and intracultural relations. Keep writing. For archaeological anthropologists, civilization is the culture of complex societies. Civilization is the culture of complex societies organized around more evolved, stable economic subsistences, social stratification, and state as a political organization. In other words, the material evidences for archaeology suggest sophistication in the techniques of manufacturing the tool, along with the more complex arrangement of human habitations. Hence, contemporary social and archaeological anthropologists define civilization as a more evolved, complex, variant of culture, right in the next paragraph. In general, for the modern anthropologists, culture can be explained by the empirically derived criteria. Underline the word empirically derived criteria, such as high food production, high managerial skills to handle economic, political, and military organizations, centralized economic and political systems, specialization, urbanization, and non-kin based political institutions. Non-kin based political institutions. Read what you have written to yourself on civilization. Write, give me any questions if need clarification. Why I made a formal dictation is that amorphously people might be knowing, having some idea about what civilization could be, but when it comes to penning down more than a couple of lines, people may not be able to write. So I thought that I would give some stuff so that you can take it to a 100 word question. Hanji sir, please. We still have not come to the topic of political anthropology, but let me say this here. When we are comparing different levels of evolution of political systems, we have this name called band. Band is the earliest and maybe perhaps the least complex, the most simplified one, and having the very less number of people. So generally, we define band as the people who are nomadic, who are at the foraging stage, and they are close-knit kin groups. So the basic definition of band itself, the basic nature of band is it is a kin-based organization. And hence, the eldest male member or somebody of that kind, based on what the group feels fit for the qualifications of being a leader, like you have seen among the Chenchus, etc. Those are the foraging groups where the eldest male member of that kin group rules, kind of a thing. When we are saying all this, this is a group that has a kinsman ruling. So when we go to more evolved political systems, such as when we come to the term called a tribe, at the tribe level political systems, we are going to see some that are kin-based political systems, some that need not be kin-based political systems. Let me say this, give us an example for this. There is going to be one term that would occur called associations. You must have been a part of several associations. For example, can you name one? Any association you are a member of, or you can be a potential member of? ABVP. Member Miru? Miru member. Thank you. So maybe it's a students' organization, students' association. Association is a group that has some kind of common purpose. It has a common purpose. The members need not necessarily be from the kin group alone. Interestingly, one question had come. I still have to ponder over it. Kiska tha? Siblings share a platonic relationship, and this phenomena is universal. No one explicitly trains us, but everyone behaves like that. Is it a biological thing or a cultural thing? I'll respond to it. There are certain things that I want to talk about in that. But then I really liked the question, how is it that siblings share the platonic relationship? Adenti Resugurram kada siblings share a platonic relationship, and this is a universal phenomena. Suddenly you realize that there is some pull of the blood. After all, it is blood. It pulls. We are also going to see the various connotations of blood when I come to talk about this. So association is a non-kin group, need not necessarily be a kin-based group of individuals, but they might be having some kind of common purpose. For the realization of this, you must have come close. Like, civil services, anthropology, optional students association. So you might be having some set of problems, some set of demands, kind of a thing. So this is actually, there might be one common purpose. So, sir, I have also at one point of time mentioned the age sets and age grades. You remember? A term called age set and age grade. I'll recall for you. I'm sure very less number of you might be able to recall that. When we say that age group, it is a random population that only falls in that age. See, when I say adult population, this is a random number. So maybe from 20, 21 to some number, say 40, etc. Or when we say adolescents, there is a random number there, maybe a 12 to 15, 12 to 18, whatever. But we are not going into further details there. So there is no distinction there between a person, say at 20 and a person at 40. Culturally and then biologically also, they are at two different levels altogether. They are not one and the same. So when we say age group, that does not take into account the differences either at a biological level or at a cultural level. But when it comes to age grade, I was mentioning that the team of Nigeria and newer of Sudan, in the context of age grade and age set, I said to you that later we will come back on these discussions. We still have to in political anthropology. I have drawn one circle-like thing. You are moving from one stage of life to the other. There can be 4 broad stages, like not yet initiated boys, and then initiated young men, adult individuals, and then retired group of people. And within each of those stages, there will be a segregation. There would be a further division. So you say that children may be from say 1 year of age to say 14, 15 years or whatever, till one enters the adolescence. But these individuals from say 1 or to 14, 13, whatever, this group is not homogeneous. You would segregate them, segregating for the purpose that these are the people who are moving from one stage of life to the other together. So maybe the division may be as small as 1 year, all the people from 1 to 2 years of age, or 1 to 4 years of age, based on how the culture looks at it. These individuals are moving from one stage of life to the other, into the next stage and together. So when I'm saying all this, these groups need not necessarily be kin groups. They may be non-kin groups also. Okay, and this kind of a description we see in the political institutions also. For example, today's modern political systems such as the state or the chiefdom, they are not actually kin-based political systems. This is what we mean by non-kin entities. Anything else, sir? Can I go? Any other questions? Sanji, sir. You can. Anything that can be empirically proved or empirically an evidence can be sought. So food habits, suppose you are talking about something like less processing of the food that happens to the more processing, maybe perhaps. It's like, the parabolic evolution we are into. Unprocessed food to processed, heavily processed food, then once again we are going to less processed food. When people say that no, don't go with all kinds of processing, this is not good for your health. So we are once again going back to same kind of gajar ye wo chabare baith ke kind of a thing. Anything? People were asking some questions. Yes, 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 that's what we are saying. His way of looking at things is, it's so very highly ethnocentric that he is considering civilizational stage as a stage of culture, meaning that the rest of the people, though have some element of culture, he is not considering as such. That the later thinkers criticize, saying that no, this is not right, and hence the other thing. You can. That happens at many places actually. Whenever we are speaking of creation of two different nations, that can also be based on one cultural trait of religion. So all those are examples of ethnic boundaries, or that can be dubbed as social boundaries. Can I go? Write some statements about the concept of society. Society is a collection of individuals united by certain relations or mode of behavior which mark them off from the others who do not enter into these relations or who differ from them in behavior. First you take the other definition too, then we will try talking about them. Can I go, sir? It is the largest group to which any individual can belong. It is made up of population, organization, time, place, and a common interest. This later definition seemed to be talking about components of society. Society must have people. It might be a temporal thing, it may be a spatial thing. So a society that we see in one part of the world may not be same as the society that we see in the other part of the world. When we are saying all this, we are actually talking about something called the relations the individuals or the groups within might be sharing with each other. So one society is different from the other, primarily in the aspect that, see, bear in mind that society actually is a group of people who have some broad similarity in spite of the fact that there is an inherent diversity therein. But then the members of a society understand the similarities and diversities within themselves, and respecting, accepting the differences, they are actually establishing a relationship that would help them live long together. So you will have to understand that when we speak about culture, culture is rather a term that describes homogeneity in the group. Society is a concept that accepts that there is a diversity within. So you can actually understand very closely here, Indian society is a multicultural group. It means that by being a society itself, you have accepted that, see, there are so many diverse groups therein, and we understand the existence of each other. Understanding the diversity, we are establishing relation with each other, and with that relationship, we are actually able to live longer together. Our sustenance may be dependent on the other diverse groups. So when we say caste system, India is a caste-driven society. When we say this, caste can be seen as, different castes can be seen as having culture in themselves. Each caste might be having its own culture based on whatever characteristics we are speaking about in culture. Every caste has got its own culture, and different castes have accepted. They know that the other castes are existing. They accepted the relation with the other caste. They accepted the interdependency so that we can live together and flourish. I hope you have understood. That is the meaning of this. And this kind of relationship one group might be having with the other is unique to that particular society. That is the reason why we made statements there, such as caste system is unique to Indian society. If I had started with these things in the first class, you wouldn't make a head and tail. Now at least a head you are able to make, if not the tail. Is that clear to you? Is that clear to you? So society inevitably should have individuals. Without individuals, there cannot be a society. And society can exist only if it has a relation between the members therein. Through this relationship emerges some kind of commonality in the group. That commonality is in spite of internal differences in the individuals and groups. Am I clear to you now? Look at both the definitions again and again and see if any question comes to your mind. Now you are no amateurs in anthropology. After having read so much, and some of you after having written so much, I don't think you are the same as what you were when we had first met in the month of June. If not anything else, you have heard by now so many names and so many concepts. If not the whole lot of it, at least your ears are familiar with certain terms. Keep writing certain statements there. Society inevitably consists of people, and the way they behave within their own cultural realm, and in relation with the members of other cultures. Hence, at a fundamental level, the concept of society incorporates multiculturalism within itself. In other words, society, unlike a culture group, is not necessarily homogeneous. Society, unlike a culture group, is not necessarily homogeneous. Keep writing in the next line. Society is a grouping and arrangement of people that produces culture. It has definite boundaries. Based on one or a few emerging dominant elements from the relationship between the groups, or from the way they behave with one another. Keep writing there. As explained by the concept of culture area, societal boundaries, write in the brackets, if not defined geographically, right, close the bracket, societal boundaries may change with time due to acculturation, culture change, or changing needs of individuals and groups, with culture progress. Read to yourself, ask questions. Yes, sir. Definitely is broader, not simply in terms of numbers, but in terms of diversity also. So when you are using that word, you have to understand that from the perspective of culture also, it is much more diverse and wide. Think anything, please. Ji, sir.
Within a culture group, there are some divisions.
Okay.
So can we call the culture group as a society because of those divisions, they are depending on one another?
We call those groups subcultural groups. So within the same otherwise homogeneous culture group, some kind of very highly demanding divisions are emerging. We call them subcultural groups. So subnationalism kind of, a nation and subnationalism.
In the first half of this, we are talking about, for instance, in a society, if there is a dominant religion or something, we turn the entire society in the name of that religion just because it is dominant.
See, the question here is we are trying to describe a society. Just because I have used the word dominant, you might be talking about it.
Next line also we are talking about the way different groups behave with each other.
See, when I am writing that way, it is not that I am speaking about, I am trying to dub a group based on, see, this is the religion and hence, it's not that way. There might be a commonality, there might be a broader commonality or certain agreeable things, though you don't totally belong to one kind. That's what I meant by a dominant criteria. It is not that whichever has more power, whichever is more in numbers, like how you say that there are Hindus more in number and hence are we considering Indian culture as Hindu culture. It's not that way. In spite of diversity, there might be some terms on which all the groups might be agreeing. So in this particular case, maybe all of us might be agreeing that, okay, we all belong to one particular nation, or we all belong to one particular continent. So, but of course, the question that you have said was valid somewhere else. When we were calling Indian society as describing all those concepts as Hindu society's concept, there it was valid. But here I don't mean that. So within the relationship between two or more diverse groups, because of the emergence of some accepted commonality, some accepted plane, we all try to establish a relation with each other and consider all of us as one. That oneness is nothing but society. It is because of this reason I said society can be an ethnic group. So there is an element of ethnicity there because you have some kind of stronghold, some kind of we-ness. Anything.
In a broad
You should tell me. You tell me. What is that commonality that is holding us together? BJP, yeah. Both of them together are holding you like two bulls of the bullock cart and trying to pull you through. I don't know, you tell me. So much of diversity is there, in spite of which some force is pulling us together. The force comes into very much open when you suddenly see a national flag and then tears roll down. I don't know, any time you felt that emotion when you see the national flag. The other day there was a full-length article on the front page of a Sri Lankan newspaper about that sari that had actually, So maybe they found the same kind of emotion in the sari that we found in the national flag. We'll keep thinking of it. We will have to come down to the topic of nationalism. Then we will see whether any really driving forces are there that are instrumental in keeping us together, or is it that there is a compelled unhappy marriage because of which we are somehow pushed towards each other and we are continuing with the journey. Given a chance, is it that we would really want to part off and go our own ways? Just because there is one thing like a written document of constitution is existing, or is it the only document that is holding us together? Because we understand that the kind of the martial power that controls us, is not so much responsible for us to live together. And thankfully, we are not living in autocracies or dictatorships or the military rules. Thankfully, we were never exposed to such kind of rules. In spite of the martial power not being so very obviously there in the citizenry here, we are actually living together. Maybe something like our friend, maybe you yourself was asking of this, the platonic relationship. Maybe we all have that kind of a thing. Maybe our marriages were made in the heaven, and hence across the castes, across the religions, we are able to live together. Keep writing, sir. We'll come back on nationalism, don't worry. Society consists of people who share attitudes, beliefs, and ideals in common. Different members in a society recognize presence of one another and orient their behavior one way or the other. Individuals in a society are in a continuous interaction with other individuals, resulting in a reciprocal contact between individuals and groups. It thus establishes a web of social relationships, And such relations exist on mutual consent and acceptance of existence of the other. From such a relationship, a society emerges with a characteristic of interdependence. Thus society is a large, inclusive group consisting not only of individuals related to one another, but also interconnected and overlapping groups. Right in the next paragraph. Society similar to culture is not static but a dynamic entity with constant changes due to internal and external factors. Politically, society comes up with several social control mechanisms so that societal solidarity and existence can be ensured. Continue writing there. Political anthropologists study different mechanisms of social control and variation across culture groups regarding the acceptable and non-acceptable behaviors. One small other concept, then we will go to social institutions. From a functionalist perspective, social institutions satisfy some basic human need. Hence, they are necessary for the survival of individual and society. Continue writing there. Institutions represent a social structure and machinery through which societies organize themselves direct and execute multitudes of activities for the fulfillment of societal needs. Right, in the next paragraph. In the emergence of anthropological theory, the concept of institutions was largely a subject matter in the functional and culture personality schools. The latter especially Gardiner considered institutions from the perspective of those that mold the personality of individuals, and those that are the result of individual personalities. Primary and secondary institutions as were described by Gardiner, centered around behavioral aspects. On the other hand, Malinowski's idea of institution was to fulfill different levels of human needs. Keep writing that in the next paragraph. Malinowski mentioned the following as the chief characteristics of institutions. Write in points there. Firstly, institutions are products of products of interaction between individuals, that is, the repetitive forms of relationships, between individuals give rise to a culturally defined need, for the fulfillment of which each culture innovates its own institutions. Secondly, every institution must have certain well-established rules the members are supposed to follow. Thirdly, institutions, along with other aspects of society and culture, undergo change which might be a gradual change unless otherwise exposed to a catastrophic situation in the said society. Fourthly, every institution functions as a cultural symbol in itself, because any institution is a specific response to a need from the said culture or society. Fifth or sixth, whatever. Institutions are universal. That is, they exist in all societies across time and space, with inherent variables across the culture groups. Right in the next paragraph. Institutions are categorized based on the earliest ones intervening with human life, earliest ones intervening with the human life as primary and secondary institutions. Primary and secondary institutions. Institutions like a family, economic institutions, religion, education fall under primary category, with so these are some of the secondary institutions. I try to arrange them pertaining to the list that you have written in the primary category. Marriage and divorce, the ones taking the family into a secondary stage. Property, trading, banking, these are the details therein. If you look at religion as the primary institution within every religion, so it is something like this. Whatever we try to mention here are the segments therein. So religion could be a major institution, but within religion there can be sub-institutions that can be categorized as the secondary institutions. So this is based on the grade. Family is the primary institution. Within the family there can be several other institutions, which could be, a kin group can also be within the family. A marriage can be an institution within the family. A divorce can be an institution within the family. Similarly, in the educational institutions, there can be several categories. They are defined as primary based on the earliest ones that can influence the individual's needs, individual's behavior. So within each of those categories, based on where one falls, there can be sub-level institutions. Keep writing there.
Education you have classified it under primary category. So basically, marriage is the one which is more primitive than education.
No, it is not that way. I am not talking about which one comes first later. It is not in terms of a massive evolution scheme. It is taking the individual as the central theme. Taking the individual as the central theme, these are the primary institutions that influence the individual in the first go. So I am generally giving certain categories there, within which there can be subcategories. So it is not in terms of evolution that I am organizing. I am not even organizing in terms of primary and secondary, as was said by Gardiner. If at all that was the case, religion should not be there in the first category. Keep writing, you will understand. We will write about it. We will write about it. What you do is, institutions like a family, economic institutions, religion, education, and political institutions such as the state. You add one word there. Political institutions such as the state fall under primary category. So within the state, you have intergroups, party system, or whatever, different kinds of political. This is randomly I have written. A democracy could be an institution in itself, a party system can be an institution in itself, an autocracy can be an institution in itself, or a chiefdom can be an institution in itself. It is from that perspective. Keep writing. The primary institutions come into existence to fulfill a set of basic human needs full stop. The primary institutions themselves can have categories or grades. It is here cultural diversity exhibits itself. For example, the economic institutions at the civilizational level might have private property or dedicated trading institutions. On the other hand, the pre-agricultural economic institutions have a reciprocity as an institutional exchange. Right in the next paragraph. For Malinowski, the categorization of institutions is an ambiguous exercise. Instead, one has to study the institutions from the functions they render. For example, the institutions provide ways and means to fulfill human needs. They contribute to maintain social order. They assign roles and statuses to the individuals, and ultimately help in the sustenance of the society. Right in the next paragraph. For R.C. Brown, study of social institutions helps in understanding number one, arrangement of different individuals in different positions. Right in the brackets. For example, a family. Secondly, relation each individual has with the others. Thirdly, a change in the structure, and the relationship, a change in the structure and the relationship that communicates a social change. For Brown, anthropology is a discipline that studies different social institutions. He enlisted a large number of them in the social sphere, which Paul Bohannon categorized as branches of sociocultural anthropology, branches of BOHANNAN. BOHANNAN. I don't think this is the first time I'm using in the class. We have used earlier also. Branches of sociocultural anthropology. That is, familial institutions, economic institutions, political institutions, religious institutions, etc. The crux of sociocultural anthropology is to examine the establishment, functioning of these institutions across time and space. That is one small topic. I'll be mailing to you one other write-up with this title, social group, definition of social group, types of social groups, etc. You can read and get back to me on that. Let me take you to the topic of marriage. There is one very beautiful write-up, The End of Marriage, that I was reading, which I will be sharing with you in tomorrow's class. But before that, there's a small presentation which you can watch, and then I will you can visit that site. They have so many such things in social anthropology. It all depends on who is holding the club. Most of us will do that. Girls may look so very innocent at the time of marriage, very dangerous. Love vaporizes the moment the bell rings. Maybe he found a new one. Married males can tell me that. That I really love that presentation, so I thought I would share it with you. Sir, your syllabus about this particular topic, marriage is a social institution. You will look at the definitions first. I want you to start with some of the definitions that are given in your booklet. Booklet number 3, page number 29. This was a question that was asked many times, problem of defining marriage. It's like defining elephant blindfolded. There's so many diverse things, diverse ways of understanding, diverse ways of practicing marriage, and hence defining with one single uniform definition becomes a difficulty. This is a very academically written document. I tried to categorize there the definitions into two, traditional and modern definitions. But before that, you can see notes and queries definition that is mostly accepted. It is generally, the word generally has to be underlined, generally considered as a union between a man and a woman, very significantly there. Is very important. A union between a man and a woman such that children born to the women are recognized legitimate offsprings of both the parents. That is the generally accepted definition of marriage across the societies, the so-called civilized societies. It's generally understood that it is a union of a man and a woman so that the children born to them are legitimate offspring of the couple. In most of the definitions, there is an emphasis given to the children. So much so that some of the thinkers, they dubbed marriage as an institution that gives legitimacy to the to-be-born child. You also must have thought of marriage many times in your life, have been postponing because of UPSC. All the youthful years are vaporizing. Your teacher, biology teacher, has suggested you not to wait beyond 35 years in the other class. I suggest you not to cross 30 years. Why unnecessary troubles after 30? There's so many problems emerging. Aging, phenomena becomes much more obvious after 30. What will you do after getting married after 30? So it's better as early as possible. Unfortunately, with UPSC increasing the age limit, this very important rite of passage is also getting delayed. Intelligent are those who are not postponing their lives' rights based on UPSC. That is actually deciding our life. It should not be that way. Look at some of those definitions. See, the classification that I have given, the traditional modern, is based on several criteria. One criteria is whether there is the prerequisite of a man and a woman. That is one. Secondly, should there be only one on each side? Thirdly, is that relationship a permanent one or not? Fourthly, are the rights so very strictly recognized? Are the rights so very strictly recognized? I repeat what I said. The criteria is based on whether there is an inevitable presence of a woman and a man, at least on each sides. Secondly, how many, basically? Is it only one? Thirdly, permanency of it. Whether marriage is considered to be an institution that is more or less permanent, or is there a possibility of temporary thing there? And fourthly, whether rights are so very strictly observed or not. Meaning that whether the partners are very selfish towards each other, you are totally mine, I can't share you with others kind of a thing, or there is some element of accommodation here and there kind of thing. And that's where our definitions are. So quickly we will see some of the definitions there. I have also named a few people. Maybe I would start with Westermarck himself. We know him, the one who had studied the Vedas. And do you remember that suicide thing? Yeah. And Westermarck, marriage is a religiously accepted, LY is absent there. Marriage is a religiously accepted union of women and a man living together with mutually agreed sexual rights. See, there has to be some acceptance or the other. If not a religion, some kind of social acceptance is actually necessary. That is the reason why we call for evidences there. Unless otherwise it is something like a Rakshasa marriage, where you lifted her and then you tried to forcibly marry her. Of course, these days it is not considered to be a marriage. You ask for a certificate, some kind of an evidence. Yesteryears we used to have practices where with the evidence of God they used to get married. God will not come down to be evidence for the human act. So now some kind of a human, look at that, God's evidence is actually not accepted. Human evidence alone is accepted. So you want some human to sign on the document there. But then some kind of an acceptance should be there, societal acceptance. Otherwise, marriage is not actually necessary. It's nothing more than a ritual. It's nothing more than a ritual. Why is it that people are spending so much of money inviting everybody and you get upset if somebody has not come? This looks very funny. Somebody has not attended your marriage, you have an animosity for the rest of your life. Maybe that person didn't want you to enter the suffering age in your suffering stage of your life. Maybe because of that he didn't want to come. He didn't want to see your last laugh on the dais. Man would have a last laugh on the dais, and after that she would have all laughing, and you would have whatever. Anytime, did you think anytime, so much of extravaganza there, and you want the entire world to be present. You should sit back and think, why is it that I'm doing this? Why is it that I want such a mammoth, such a massive occasion? Neighbors are actually having sleepless nights because of the drums that are being beaten in your house. And one other very crazy thing in our Hindu marriages is the muhurtam occurs at 2 o'clock in the midnight, early in the morning, 2 o'clock. Who will be awake till then? The moment people come, dinner kidhar hai? Then first they finish their dinner. If at all necessary, if at all possible, they would go meet the couple. Otherwise, with some cousin of the couple would be sufficient to, अच्छा हम आए थे बता देना उनको, and then your basic purpose is, and you are so busy organizing 500 dishes, 500 odd dishes. A sensible fellow may not be touching more than one or two. Who would be responsible for the stomach upset later? 500 dishes. And the number of dishes actually show your social status. And the amount of kaju that is actually used, I don't know. There are other conditions Westermarck gives. A man and a woman, so he is very clear, a marriage can be between one single male and one single female alone, and they have to live together, otherwise that is not a marriage. And then there has to be mutually agreed sexual right. He is not really bothered about the economic, political and other rights. He is actually worried about sexual rights alone. And I have written some kind of exceptions there. Somewhere down I try to highlight. You can see there, Azande. Can you see somewhere? 5th line from bottom, Azande of Africa. There's a boy wife. This can be an exception. When I write this, nobody has a problem. But when I write this, or when I write this, you think that I have made a mistake there. It is not my mistake, it is their mistake. In conventional conservative societies, that is considered to be an aberration. In certain societies, the aberration spreads throughout the society, and then there might be legal procedures and then laws that are coming up accepting this, accepting this. They may also accept this, not one but many, but in variety of genders there. See, we are not here to pass a judgment on them. We are not here to pass a judgment on them. People also talk in terms of what is a natural phenomena, what is an unnatural phenomena. That is something that is natural because that gives rise to the offspring. But others may feel that I don't want offspring, but for me, anything is okay. Basically, I look for my own specific needs, which I am actually getting fulfilled even by this or this. So for me, that is also natural. So what is natural may vary from individual to individual, from group to group. As long as your legal systems are accepting, things are fine. So don't try to look down upon them. It's as simple as what tastes you good, whether it is vegetarian or non-vegetarian. Similarly, it is kind of be broad-minded, accept them, whatever. I didn't say anything. When I was writing this, Azande, boy wives, he gets a bride prize also. Look at that. In Azande, there is a very clear practice of this. Now you tell me, why do you want to marry? Why do you get married? Why do you get married?
Social pressure.
Otherwise, people might ask you, what are you? And there's a social pressure, and hence I would want. And for reproduction, basically, we want progeny. See, I told you many times in the class, the moment you are born human, or any species for that matter, if you are born, every species has a primary responsibility to multiply.
To continue my genes.
Basically, it is to see to it that your species exists. It continues to exist. That is your primary responsibility. Humans are no exception to it. And alongside this, humans have an additional qualification. They can multiply in any season. There is no season unlike several other species. We can multiply anytime. We can cohabit anytime, anywhere. I didn't say anything. Your imagination has no boundaries, actually. So that is our primary requirement. We have to have progeny, and then there's a lot of social pressure for progeny. Anything else? Economic cooperation also. I am not able to earn so much, so let her earn. She is earning better. 2 incomes are better than 1 income, so if at all it is 2 friends or 2 brothers living together, that may be a temporary one. If it is a wife and husband, that's a permanent cohabitation. And then very less questions asked. He can't ask a question. He can't ask a question, how did you spend so much? I am giving you so much, how did you spend? That is not his right. It is his responsibility to give you. Spending is your right and responsibility. Now, in the case of Azande, they take the bride, give the bride price. There's a proper exchange. And for them, one of the requirements of marriage is in order to get this. Once this happens, after this happens, he is technically in no need of her because this has already happened. So technically there need not be a female in the next marriage. The requirement here is maybe to take care of all those household activities, maybe that kind of emotional relationship, and maybe to take care of the child, whatever. And for all this exercise, he will be paying a bride price. This boy will function as a boy wife. So basically here there is the role and responsibility, gender doesn't matter. Okay, so bride price can be in exchange of the individual who would function as a wife irrespective of gender. But then the definition doesn't, and then there are others also, female marriages. Look at the other definition which you can see in Seligman. Marriage is a union of a man and a woman. So, sir, back home you go through all those exceptions that I have given. Like there is an Nair marriage, Khasa marriage. Khasa, I think we have discussed many times in the class, the Majumdar's study, how the wife's behavior is generally, where the male is actually not questioning her loyalties if at all she is going to the mother's house. You're not supposed to question the loyalties. When she's there with you, she is with you. When she is not there with you, she can be there with anybody. But finally she is coming to you. You should be feeling very happy about that. And then, Seligman's definition. Marriage is a union. Sir, once you read these things, you become very accommodative. Sir, once you are accommodative, you will have a happy sleep. Sir, as long as you have loyalty questions, you will not have a happy sleep. Every time you would be trying to look at what is happening in her phone, his phone. Very difficult, very sleepless nights. You would not live your life happily. So whatever may be, 2 things you will have to learn: be accommodative and develop the habit of pardoning, excusing. Do these 2 things, you will be very, very happy. Be accommodative, be forgetful and forgiving. Those are very important so that you will live your life. And carry these statements in your mind. You will remember me, unfortunately, if it happens. Marriage is a union of a man and woman, wherein the children born to the women are accepted to be the legal children of the couple. So it looks like something of notes and query. Marriage is a union of a man and a woman, where the children born to the women are accepted to be the legal children of the couple. Okay. Let me take you further. Majumdar's definition looks to be slightly funny. Marriage consists of social-economic relations. Marriage consists of social-economic relations arising out of sexual relations between man and a woman, which is accepted by religion or civil law. Which is happening first? Which is happening first? Marriage consists of social and economic relations arising out of sexual relations between them, which is accepted by religion or civil law. Maybe the sexual contact is the first one. After that, everything else is happening. So he's talking about social and economic relations. People criticize that there is no talk of rights of sexual rights. Maybe he was highly inspired by the Khasa study. Generally, when they are defining the definition, reflects the society which they must have studied. The definition indicates the social life of the fieldwork that they have done. Maybe because of that, we don't see in that definition reservation of the sexual rights. But then they're talking about the economic and social relations. Now you see Stephen's definition. The definition runs into a paragraph. He understood that definition need not be in one sentence. Marriage is it's an essay. Marriage is a legally accepted sexual union. Fine. It is a more or less permanent relation between the couple with mutually accepted economic rights and responsibilities between the couple and their future children. It looks more comprehensive actually. It is the union between them, the relation between, the mutual relationship between the couple and between the couple and their future children. That's where the concept of legitimacy comes into picture. Who can trouble you? Your own people can trouble you. If a child is troubling you, it means that definitely he's your child. Neighbor's child can't trouble you, and you don't want to get troubled by the neighbor's child. Only if your child is troubling you, you would accept. Look at some of the others. Malinowski's definition. I love this one. He starts by saying a legal marriage, as if there's an illegal marriage also. A legal marriage gives a woman a socially accepted husband and to her child a socially accepted father. And what will the father get? Father's duty is to fulfill the responsibilities of the wife. You fellows, you understand, sir. You are not going to get anything. Not a single cup of coffee. I don't want to say. And then there are the others. Kathleen Gough. This is the lady who had actually studied the Nair Society. We had mentioned about Nair Society, erstwhile Nair Society, not the present one. Nair Society, when Kathleen Gough was studying, there was a household in the Nair called the Tharawats. Now they are monumental institutions, monumental buildings. So in the kind of Nair society that she had studied, there is no permanency of the part. Did we discuss Nair marriage? Nair marriage? I briefly talk about it. The kind of description Kathleen Gough gives. So it's like this. A female, once she attains puberty, she is wedded to a person from a clan other than her own clan. So she is wedded to this person. She lives with that person for a limited period of time, a few days with him, and then there is nothing like a cohabitation. After the marriage is solemnized, all the individuals from his clan actually have an access to her. All these are considered to be her visiting husbands. This, of course, is the original husband. These are all visiting husbands. He also can be one of the visiting husbands. The only special treatment that he gets is only when he dies, she removes her tali. If the rest of the fellows dies, this इतने सारे कीड़े मकोड़ों में वो भी चला गया, and the rest of the fellows would continue to exist. This is actually a matrilineal society, matrilocal society. So a typical Nair household, I'm not talking about the present one. In the present you don't find, but traditionally it was there. A typical Nair household used to have all the females. So mother, grandmother, and sisters, brothers, unmarried, married and unmarried brothers. So it is not like after marriage he is shifting his residence. No, he's staying with the mother only. But then the system consists of several visiting husbands. We have seen in the Toda who takes the responsibility of the child. They're not even bothered about it. The individual belongs to the household. People raised eyebrows on such kind of a system when the rest of the world, the Western world, had for the first time heard Kathleen reporting on that. But from that kind of a society's observation, she actually writes this definition. We'll read the definition, see there on page 30, Kathleen Gough, Nair definition. Marriage is a union of a woman with one or more other individuals, establishing reciprocal rights, responsibilities between them and they to be children, giving all the rights to the child as a member of that society. What is interesting there is she is accommodating union of a woman with one or more other individuals. When she says one or more other individuals, these can be male or female. So she is taking into account female-female marriage and female-male marriage. But she doesn't talk about male-male marriage because the definition comes from a woman. A woman marrying one or more other individuals with reciprocal rights and responsibilities and their children given all the rights and responsibilities as members of that particular society. So wherever you go in marriage, children are an obligation. That is the reason why your family is worried. Till you get married, they are worried. Till you give birth to a child, they are worried. Once you have fulfilled that responsibility for the lineage, then they are happy. After that, your unhappiness starts. So, sir, you actually look for those definitions, whether they are permanent or not, and those criteria. Try to memorize the definitions, and you say that, see, there are culturally so many various cultural practices because of which having one single definition is very impossible. But then the definitions indicate the kind of field work, the kind of field study they must have done. Sir, have a look at this. This is a very interesting one which I wanted to share. You need not have to worry about, this is actually based on various biblical instances. You need not have to worry about the verses of the scripture. This I will share with you so that you can use these examples and the types and forms of marriage, etc. At some places it looks funny, so I thought I would share. You will not forget this. Monogamous marriage or nuclear family is understandable, one for one. Though difficult to bear the same person for so many years. This is one of the other kinds. A man might get one or several wives. With each of the wives, she would be getting some property. The property includes the concubines. You can see somewhere else there. Yeah, here. Women and her property. Women and the other servants coming as concubines. So the relationship a male might be having with a wife and with a concubine might be different. Like how the King Akbar must have had several wives and several concubines. Status of the concubine is very well defined. She cannot claim the royal seat. Within wives there can be one chief wives and the other chief wives. There might be a conflict between them. And here, women, her servants. This is much more beautiful. A man, polygamy. Man with so many females there, polygamy. Within polygamy, that is that variety called polygyny, where a single man is marrying more than one female. And look at that. Something called a ghost marriage. You need not have to worry about reading what is written. Just look at the pictures and enjoy, and you can choose one from them, which one you would want to go for. So it's like that marriage we are going to talk about in today's class, Levirate marriage. This happened. This happened. Technically what might happen is, if at all remarriage is allowed in that society, she might leave your household, she might get married to somebody else. And now the additional problem is that she has to get property also. That is all the more worrying thing for us. So what we tell her is, no, it's not this way. I am available. We'll get married. And whoever children are born, they are considered to be the children of the dead man. That is ghost marriage. Because he left without leaving an offspring. There may be varieties in levirate. One variety is that only till she gives birth to the child, the marriage may continue, the relationship might continue. Or maybe that she is permanently married to the brother of the deceased husband. Is that fine? And there is the other one, much more interesting. A rapist and the victim. One of the very oft-shown solutions in the societies where this is accepted. He is in a way trying to legitimize the relationship between them. Maybe a very easy way to get wives. She didn't listen to you for a long time, so rape her and get married. Looks to be a very simple way of doing things. And then there are the other ones. These are the spoils of war. So wherever soldiers were going, it's all those Mongolian armies who were invading various parts of the world. So wherever they were going, those I can speak of. I don't want to speak of the contemporary ones. In contemporary ones also several things happen, but they stop at the physical contact that must have established. They might not be taking them as full-fledged wives. But here in this particular case, spoil of war is taken as a full-fledged wife. I look at the last one as a permanent solution for the problem of servants that many urban societies face. You have one male servant, one female servant, get them married, they are permanently there with you. If at all you haven't thought of that solution, I thought that solution can be given to you. This I will share with you. Those of you who have this habit of reading the scripture, you may go back to see the numbers also and see where such kind of marriage, in what circumstances those marriages actually had happened. Now let me take you to your syllabus. There is something called, apart from the definition, there are things like laws of marriage and types of marriage. So I will start with the types of marriage. Types or forms of marriage. You write that scheme, then we will watch a small AV and come back. So you can get the definitions, mostly, notes and queries definition. I'll also give one more definition, a workable one. Forms or types of marriage. Your syllabus mentions polygamy, monogamy. Polygamy can be polyandry and polygyny. Monogamy can be serial monogamy and lifetime monogamy. This may be a 10 marker for you. Even for a question of types of marriage or forms of marriage, you will have to start your answer by some kind of a definition. In many other chapters, people grumble to memorize the definitions, but I think here people would more than required attention they give, and sir, I want you to take this definition. Marriage is a set of cultural patterns to sanction parenthood and to provide stable background for the care and rearing of the children. So you understand that you are marrying not for your own pleasure, it is for children and rearing of children. Once you understand that, there won't be any problem in the postpartum sex taboo. set of cultural patterns to sanction parenthood and to provide stable background for the care and rearing of children. Everything said and done, notes and queries definition is most acceptable one. There they are clearly specifying the number, a man and a woman. Preference for more numbers might be the result of the ecology or the situation, a social situation or the ecological situation that must have emerged. When there is a clear imbalance in numbers, you might actually opt for polygyny or polyandry. Well, somewhere there has to be a compromise. But in an otherwise demographically equal society, meaning near equal numbers are there, but still there is a practice of either polygyny or polyandry. That might be because of certain situations. We must have seen this in the case of Sembagan chiefs, where there are more number of wives there. Not that they have unequal number of male and female. They are using these numbers in order to establish their supremacy. I'll show you something, then we will go to have a brief idea.
It's Anthropology Late at Night with your host, Johnny Soup Bone.
Thank you. Welcome to the show. Tonight our guests are here to talk about the different forms of marriage. Now I knew there was some paperwork involved, but I wonder how many forms they're talking about. I guess we'll find out. Please welcome our first guests, Mark and Sally. Thanks for being on the show. So, you two are going to talk about the forms of marriage. What does that mean exactly?
Well, Johnny, we're going to talk about one specific form of marriage.
Monogamy. We're going to talk about monogamy.
Monogamy? What is that?
Well,
It's a marriage form in which both partners have just one spouse.
at a time. One spouse at a time.
I see. How does it work?
It's the most common form of marriage worldwide.
It's also the only legally recognized form of marriage in North America and most of Europe.
It sounds like you're saying there are more ways for people to be married to each other than just what we see here in the United States.
Yes, that's right, Johnny. Forms of marriage vary from one culture to the next.
So, can you define marriage for me, then?
Marriage is a culturally sanctioned union between two or more people that establishes certain rights and obligations between the people, between them and their children, and between them and their in-laws.
Marriage payments. And I also must have asked you to read about kinship behavior in the topic of kinship. But anyways, now one we have said is marriage definition, marriage payments. We are looking at forms or types of marriage. There a more elaborate table is given there. Some of them like sororate, levirate kind of things. We will be looking at them a little while later. But this one. Marriage is a culturally sanctioned union between two or more people, between them and their children, and between them and their in-laws. In the definition itself, it is made clear that marriage can be a union between two or more people. And it is not a simple affair between two individuals. It may be two communities.
Marriage is a culturally sanctioned union between two or more people, between them and their children, and between them and their in-laws.
Transfer of rights and obligations at the time of marriage is very, very important. We will be talking about it in a topic called instability in marriage. There's something called instability in marriage. It is not mentioned in your syllabus, but this is one of the expected questions. Instability in marriage. Why instability arises? So I think that is also going to be a very significant thing for your life and future. Those are all the rights and obligations. They are not limited to sex, labor, property, child rearing.
Such marriage rights and obligations most often include, but are not limited to, sex, labor, property, child rearing, exchange, and status.
I always knew marriage was complicated, but this is more involved than I thought. So you're saying that marriage is about not only the people who are marrying each other.
Indeed. It's also about the in-laws and the children that might be born to that marriage.
Marriage and divorce rules have been bound to inheritance of property, probably since people started to own things and accumulate wealth to pass on to their children.
That's fascinating. So are you bonded for life, till death do you part? And all that?
Yes.
No. In North America and Europe, it's not that difficult to get a divorce. People practice serial monogamy. An individual marries a series of partners in succession.
Thanks for coming on the show. I hope this monogamy thing works out for you.
You're welcome, Johnny.
It's not easy, but we work on it.
Our next guests are practitioners of polygyny. Please welcome the Smiths. You are the Smiths.
I'm Veena.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Bridget.
What is polygyny?
It's a marriage form in which a man is married to two or more women at the same time.
Polygyny is a marriage form in which a man is married to two or more women at the same time.
So you're all married to each other. Is that legal?
Not in the United States. But we belong to the Bedouin tribe of North Africa.
Well, you don't really look like I expect Bedouins to look.
I hope you aren't stereotyping, Johnny. Don't get all racial on us.
It's just that, well, never mind. So you have two wives?
No, I have one husband, and so does Vienna. It just happens to be the same man.
How did you end up with two wives, Alan?
We can only have more than one wife if we can afford to support and take care of each one of them, and the children I have with them, equally well.
Where is polygyny practiced?
Polygyny is practiced in about 80% of the world's cultures, in much of sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia.
It's common in pastoralist and horticultural cultures where women do most of the work taking care of the animals or crops. Women are highly valued as wealth creators.
If the men are marrying more than one woman, and the average sex ratio is right around 1:1 in most cultures, are there enough marriage partners for all the men?
Yes. There tends to be a female-biased sex ratio in these cultures because many adult men are lost to violence and warfare. In societies where men are more involved in productive work, polygyny isn't as common. Women are more dependent on men for support, and are valued mainly as child-bearers. We see this mostly in pastoral nomadic cultures where men own and tend the livestock. In these societies, a man may take another wife if his first wife is infertile.
He might also have multiple wives if he wants to demonstrate his high position in society.
How do you women feel about sharing a husband?
There is not a lot of jealousy, if that's what you mean. Having a co-wife takes much of the burden of cleaning, cooking, and childcare off any one wife. Each wife has her own house, but often we work together and share childcare.
I had no idea it could work. What about the kids? If they have multiple moms but only one dad, does that complicate things for them?
No, not really. My children call me Mom, and they call Bridget Mama Bridget. It's no problem.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I had no idea how this form of marriage works. It's very interesting.
You're welcome, Johnny. It was fun to be here.
My next guests are from Tibet, and practice yet another interesting form of marriage. Please welcome the Chodens. Thanks for being here. You are Pemba, Da-Chen, and Amrita.
That's right, Johnny. I'm Pemba. My brother is Da-Chen, and our wife is Amrita.
Explain to me what your marriage is like.
We practice a rare form of marriage called polyandry. Polyandry is a marriage form in which one woman is married to more than one man at the same time.
Does it work? I could see one man married to more than one woman, but...
Of course it works. It is pretty rare though. It only exists in fewer than a dozen societies that we know of. All of these societies have a few things in common.
In the Marquesan Islands in the Pacific, and in Tibet where we're from, for example, inheritance is passed down from fathers to sons.
The marriage of brothers to the same woman keeps the land together by preventing it from being cut up into tinier and tinier parcels each generation for sons to inherit. It also holds down population growth, so people don't put too much pressure on resources. It's a kind of natural birth control.
And in Tibet, having all brothers working in the same household means there will be enough people to do all the work. Things like trading trips, farming, and herding.
It's pretty amazing. I have to admit, I'd never heard of polyandry until today.
It is not a common practice, Johnny, so it's not surprising that you've never heard of it. Most cultures that have polyandry are in the Himalayan mountain region.
How do the children know who their father is?
Both Pemba and I claim fatherhood of all children born to this marriage.
We have little concern for biological paternity.
I think it would be difficult for me to share a wife with my brothers.
I can only imagine, Johnny.
Thank you for being here and talking to us about this fascinating marriage form, Amrita, Dakan and Pemberchoden.
It was our pleasure, Johnny.
Well, that's it for the show. Be sure to join us next time when we talk about another fascinating anthropology topic.
Don't worry writing, I'll share this document with you, and along with that you have some write-up on page number 33, forms of marriage. You can use both of them. Actually that explains a lot of things, especially in polygyny. So you can keep watching at it and noting down the things. Along with, your syllabus also talks about regulations of marriage. In regulations there are some types are covered, so we'll have to do them together. Preferential, prescribed and proscriptive regulations, those are the three names that are used there. When we say regulations, these are the rules that prescribe whom you can marry, whom you cannot marry. So prescribe the rules that prescribe whom you can marry, whom you cannot marry. This is a fundamental chart that we follow. Somebody by name Needham gives the regulations or rules of marriage. Sir, when you are writing, kindly make one change. You first write proscribed, then you go for prescribed and preferential. First you write proscribed, within which one example is given, that is incest, taboo. Prescribed, endogamy and exogamy. Preferential, sororate, levirate, uncle, niece and cousin marriages. Do not get confused. If the question is about rules or regulations of marriage, you have to write about the rules that mention, that prescribe whom one can marry, whom one cannot marry. And you try to understand the difference between the rules and regulations of marriage vis-a-vis the types of marriage. You will have to understand that in rules we are telling you whom you can marry, whom you cannot marry. In the types we are telling you how many you can marry. That is the basic difference. Don't get confused. Many students get confused there. So proscribed or incest, taboo, prescribed or endogamy and exogamy, preferential, sororate, levirate, uncle, niece marriages and cousin marriages. I repeat what I said if at all you didn't pay attention. Regulations or rules of marriage talk about whom one can marry, one cannot marry. After having decided the group or the individuals from whom you can or cannot marry, the second thing is how many you can marry. But of course that problem will be there in the polygyny explanation that A.V. gives. We can marry only if we can take care of them well and their children too. On the other hand, there is the other option also in that discussion itself. In pastoral horticultural societies where women are the large bread earners, You need not have to mend for their needs. They will take care of their own needs. And maybe कुछ आपको भी दे देंगे. Several wives are there, 10 wives are there, and then they will contribute for your food and your stay, kind of thing. That can be done. अच्छा, आपका वो list तो लिख लेना, please. And we are at 63. We started with concepts of culture, society, civilization, social institutions, for which you are largely doing from the class note. Social groups, you will get it from the PPT that I will share with you. We started with marriage definitions, which you will study from AN03. Marriage types as well you will see from AN03 and the AV that I am going to share with you. In the next class we will be starting with regulations of marriage. So I repeat, sir, we did with society, culture, civilization, social institutions. Social groups will be shared with you. Marriage definition AN03, marriage types AN03 and the AV. Thank you so very much.